On today's show, we're talking about why guys struggle. Hey guys, welcome back to Strategic Baseball Podcast. Today, Darrell and I are going to be talking about why guys struggle. And, last couple of episodes, man, we've been getting kind of deep on some of this stuff, and some of the feedback's been good. And so we appreciate that. We'd love to hear more from you guys. So don't hesitate to let us know kind of where you're at and what you're thinking. But anyway, today we're talking about why guys struggle. Geoff and Darrell here, and we help baseball players get to the next level with a strategic advantage so that they could play with supreme confidence against the best players at any level. In every episode, we promise to deliver value on the strategic side of player development so that you can help your players compete with players just as good, if not better than them. Darrell, the pitching strategist, I'm a hitting strategist, and this is Strategic Baseball Podcast. If you are interested in joining our circle, head over to strategic-baseball.com and submit your email. And always get a reminder each time we release a new episode, get weekly tips from Darrell and I, and then a PDF transcription with visuals of the previous episode and much more. If you are a player, parent, or coach who is interested in learning more about how the strategic advantage baseball process works for you and your unique situation, please email me at jeff@athletic-mission.com or Darrell at dc@startpitching.com. You can find those in the show notes. Reach out to us and call us and email us, and we'd love to arrange a time to talk and see how we can help you guys. All right, Darrell, I'm gonna let you kick this off. We're talking today about why guys struggle.
Yeah, this is a conversation that I think we need to have because we're getting feedback now from, the first, 15, 20 shows we've done now. And we're really framing out this kind of strategic thinker, this kind of strategic advantage. And it's starting to resonate. I think some of these players and coaches and parents are starting to say, yeah, man, there's other aspects of it. And I think what happens, and I'm guilty of this, when I was younger and when I was playing, you just kind of think because you got physical talent or that you can throw hard, that it's automatically going to kind of transform or manifest itself into this baseball knowledge or this game day strategy. And when we're young, we got a tendency to really focus on the result versus how we got the result. And I think when you and I got together and we started to try to find our niche, our place in kind of this baseball instructional world, and over the last few years where you and I were really kicking around this idea of, hey, how do we continue to grow the game? But at the same time, how do we take the kids that are maybe 12, 13, 14 and really love the game? The parents tell us that they love the game, that they're excited to go to practice, they're committed. How do we take those that maybe don't have or haven't matured and haven't physically developed like some of their peers have, and really give them a mindset? And that's what strategic advantage baseball is. It's a mindset. And when they see that they can feel almost like they're self-assessing and projectable, that they can see themselves, that they continue to work and do the things that they need to do, that their physical development, their maturity will catch up with their baseball knowledge. And I think we've been so hyper-focused in the baseball world on mechanics and strength conditioning. And again, as they get into high school and if they want to play college baseball, all of that is a critical piece of it, because the health and as these guys are really developing into their man bodies, it makes a huge difference. But with these 12, 13, 14-year-olds who some of them might grow 3 or 4 inches in 3 months and everything they just learned last year is totally different, then how do we give them a mindset? How do we really identify the things that should be what I call the new baseball fundamentals? We have the athletic fundamentals, the structural, how the game is played, the things that we need to do to just understand fundamentally how baseball is played. How to throw a baseball, how to field a ground ball, how to run the bases. all the fundamental things that are critical and important. But at the same time, as they continue to grow and develop and want to really take the game to the next level, as they move through those 3 R's that we call it, the respect, the recognition, and the rewards aspect and phases of why they want to play, the motivations, then we see these kids that, really are trapped in this compare and convince mindset. And if, as coaches and parents, if we can take that group of players and really help them understand that, hey, man, you're going to physically mature. You're not going to be stuck at this 95 pounds forever. But if you'll grasp this other aspects of the game, when you do physically develop, then, man, that's going to put you miles ahead of the guys that just trusted their physical capability and never did develop the mental side, the strategic side, and then never do really handle that leveling up and playing against players that are just as good and better than them. And that is the ultimate key to continue to grow and develop as a player. And so the things that I think you and I are seeing, because we've kind of defined our niche, that's the type of player that's showing up. The guy that has some physical capability, but really is now wanting to level up into that recognition and rewards phase. That kind of, now it's about, I want playing time, I want to start, or I want to be the number 1, number 2 pitcher, or now it's time for me to start being that type of player that I really want to be. And I'm willing to put in that extra work each week to do it. And I think when we start doing that assessment that way, and really it's about the commitment level and the desire of the player more than it is us starting with that physical assessment, I think that's been what you and I have had success with this last 4 or 5 months, even through this COVID and the new virtual conversations and all the different things that we've had to do to make those adjustments. But what we've seen here at Athletic Mission is when we start the conversation, not just about what your goals and dreams are about, but really about where are you at and where do you see yourself at? And we don't start with the physical assessment here. We start with kind of where do you see you're at, or where do you see you're at mentally, and kind of how do you prepare? What do you do to show up and play on game day? And man, I think that's been the cool little, aha moment for you and I, is when these guys start describing what's not happening on game day for them successfully, and then kind of dissecting it back, then it gives them a different mindset and a different kind of view of why the fundamentals matter, why mechanics matter, why the strength and conditioning program matters, why recovery matters. All the things that we try to really kind of over-assess or super-assess when they first come in. And that mindset shift, man, has been a game changer for us, because now we're having better conversations. We're building trust sooner. These kids are really seeing that it's not about what everybody else is doing. It's about what I'm capable of doing and where I'm currently at. And when we have that conversation, then we can kind of dissect, hey, man, what's really happening, and really do the deeper dive assessments into their physical capability and kind of what they've been doing. Is there some stuff we maybe need to unlearn, or maybe are they confused because they've had 3 or 4 or 5 different coaches giving them different advice or tips or feedback or cues, and then kind of just trying to calm their mind down a little bit about what they need to do even from the very first step on. And that's kind of where we've developed that process, our 5-step, that clarity, understanding, mastery, strategy, and then game day. And so everything that we teach them, it starts with clarity. If they don't have clarity about what it is that they are wanting to do, or what it is that we need them to do, or what it is that coach expects them to do, if they never have clarity about that, why would we expect them just to be able to do it? Baseball is hard, man. And when we really start breaking down why guys struggle, we can sit here and have this surface level kind of generalities about baseball's hard, hitting up fastballs hard, or consistently executing pitches over an 18-inch plate is hard. But the reality of it is, in these players' minds, that's not what they're thinking. They're trying to tie it back to some lack of that they have. And I think that's the cool thing about the conversations when we start with strategy with these guys, like, what are you thinking on game day? What are you literally thinking when you're standing in the box? What are you literally thinking when you're standing on the rubber and that catcher puts a sign down? And we build that relationship through that conversation with these guys, then it's like, again, like we keep talking about, it's like a whole different view to baseball for them. And when the kids see that, that's where we've seen the growth, and that's where we've seen maybe these kids that were about to quit or thought baseball was boring or thought they sucked and just wasn't ever going to be very good at it. All of a sudden now they had a different perspective. That kind of mindset shift from that compare and convince into, okay, how do I compete and contribute to my team? That opens up a whole different part of their brain. And it's like, okay, man, now I get it. Now I see it. Now we can go back and plug in the drills and the things that we need them to do, the practice habits and the routines that they need to develop. And it seems like it gives them a whole different sense about who they are. That clarity and understanding now gives them that pathway to practice until mastery and now have that confidence to really think that I can do this on purpose. I can create a strategy and it's going to show up on game day, man. So I know that's kind of deep, but I wanted the listeners to get a grasp of that our assessments are more than just video analysis and you coming in and taking a swing or two or throwing 8 or 9 pitches off a mound and giving you some surface level generic pitching analysis or hitting analysis. It's really around where are you at as a baseball player? Where's your mind at as a baseball player? And then how do we kind of dissect and move it backwards to now here's the plan. Here's what we ought to be doing daily, or here's some ideas and suggestions, some things you ought to consider. And Geoff, I think it's pretty cool because we're seeing that work. And so the guys that come here and the guys that grasp that piece of it, man, they want to come work out. They want to come see it. And now, as we'll talk about in the next show or future shows, we'll talk about why boring practice works. And these guys grasp it then because it's really not boring. It's really just about mastery so they can create a strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about why guys struggle, we need to approach the conversation backwards.
Yep.
You know, guys don't come to us because they're struggling in bullpens or they're struggling in batting practice.
Right.
If they've made it to us, they want to talk about why what they're doing in practice is not showing up on game day. They want to talk about their struggles in real baseball games. And so when we start looking at game day struggle, we want to talk about what are they thinking?
Yep.
What is literally going through their mind when they're in that box or when they're on that mound? And when you give these kids permission to talk without judging them or making fun of them or making them feel stupid, they will share. Once they have your trust, they will share with you
absolutely
that thought behind the thought behind the thought. You know, a lot of these kids, that first thought is always like that surface level answer. And most kids tend to want to, their answer typically what they think the coach wants to hear.
Absolutely.
But that is exactly why guys are struggling, because nobody wants to take that conversation further and take that conversation deeper and helping them figure that piece out. And so now when we talk about, once we've gotten that thought behind the thought behind the thought, and we got that understanding, now we can talk about the plan and how we're going to structure practice individually for them based on where they're currently at.
Right.
And that's why we at Athletic Mission always tend to start with mindset. We want to talk about the mindset. We want that strategic mindset. And then we go into pre-pitch routine, you know, your approach, your decision-making process. And then we go on the hitting side, we go on the stick process. So the see and spin, timing, knowledge of the zone, and then swing.
Right.
And now you start to see, you know, and this whole process, the mindset, pre-pitch routine, the stick process, everything that they're doing there, it's individualized because certain guys are in certain spots and they need some very specific focus.
Right.
But you only get here with guys. You only get here and have a plan like this and a process like this when you work backwards and you really, really understand what the struggles are on game day.
Right.
And then once you have all that, now the guys, the kids, really start to get clarity and understanding on why they need to work on what they need to work on in practice. And their focus and attention to details get better in practice as well.
Absolutely. And that's something, Geoff, I tell them, man, for 15 years, that's what I did, was just confidential consulting with elite level pitchers. And it wasn't about mechanics. It wasn't necessarily about pitch grip, wrist and forearm angle. All that stuff is a prerequisite at that level. But the conversations around, honestly, how do I take my skills and turn it into a strategy and then go confidently execute it against great baseball players? See, that's competition, man. And that's more than just a mental thing. That's more than just positive self-talk or believing in yourself. It's really about executing a strategy and it being so personalized that they take ownership of it. And so a lot of these conversations that we're having with these high school players now is conversations I had with pro and college guys for 15 years. And when you build a relationship with these guys and they trust you, then they tell you about the things that are not what everybody else is teaching on Twitter or what everybody's talking about on the internet. They're talking about how do I personally decide what pitch I need to throw in this situation and count? And how do I trust that, man? How do I trust that in AA or AAA or in the big leagues? And how do I do it against guys that, nowadays with all the video and all the technology we have, there's so much data and analytics that you can use. And I'm not anti-data. I love it. But I love it when my guys are strategic thinkers. And when they're strategic thinkers, then they don't look at it as a stat. They look at it, how did he get that stat? And within how he got that stat is where I'm going to find my ability to expose him, or I'm going to find that weakness. And if I can find that weakness and execute this pitch in this location, because I know his tendency is to look for that in his hot zone away, and I can show it in that hot zone and move it down, now all of a sudden I got a strategic advantage just for that one situation and count. And a lot of times, man, that's what the game comes down to. But when we say it, just like I told you, if you've never really thought like that and you've never had a mindset like that, then you've been a really good physically capable player, like you throw hard and you got like skills, when it meets strategy, it either causes confusion and guys reject it and kind of walk away, or guys are like, holy cow, this is what competition is. I love this. And this is the piece that when we start talking to our guys that really want to play college or pro ball and have a chance to really see how far they can go, then when they embrace this mindset, man, they have a totally different mindset and attitude towards training. See, now training becomes, how do I master my skills so I can create a strategy, versus me just trying to impress a scout, or me and my magical measurables turning into some kind of baseball skills. And I think that's the cool thing about pro baseball is pro baseball, you got to be a strategic thinker. If you're going to be successful and continue to compete against the best players in the world, if you don't have that strategic advantage mindset where everything I do is learning how I take my skills, my capabilities, and get a strategic advantage against my opponent, then you're going to struggle, because I guarantee you they're breaking you down and they're trying to figure out what it's going to take to get you. So if you don't have that strategic advantage mindset, or you're not a strategic thinker, then that's going to be an issue. And so that's what I want my big takeaway for today to be, man. I want guys to be strategic thinkers. I want them to get that piece of it So when they look at the game, they're not judging themselves based on their physical capability, that they're really looking at their opponent. And then now, how do I take what I'm capable of doing and create a strategy? Because as I told you before, when I see pitchers choke, it's not usually because of a lack of physical capability. It's because when they're in the middle of a game and they're in a situation or they're struggling, they don't have a strategy on how to get out of it. They don't have a strategy on what to do to that hitter, and they're having that emotional tug of war between their head and their heart about what I should do and what I want to do or what I feel like doing. And when we get to that piece of it, especially as a pitcher, and you're literally the center of attention and all eyes are on you, man, that can be overwhelming. And so if we can develop this strategic thinking mindset and really focus more on strategy, then as we're doing our training and our practicing, it all kind of seems like it's relevant and is pointing to a strategy that I can use on game day. Then we kind of see these kids grasp that process, man, and have a lot more success.
Absolutely. And you can see now how this gets hyper individualized. Everyone is different in where they are currently at. They're different in what they experience on game day. They're different in what they're thinking, and they're different in how they prepare. And this is where our assessment process comes into play. You know, we start in game and then work backwards and start to tie everything together and come together. So we use it so we can use it like in a real game with extreme pressure. And Darrell, you mentioned, data. And again, we're not anti-data, but there's so much data out there and guys have tremendous access to it. But very, very, very few guys understand what it means and how to use it to give them a strategic advantage on game day. We see it all the time. Our guys bring their data to us so we can show them and help them understand what it all means and whether it's something they need to focus on to improve or whether it's going to help them on game day. And so that's my big takeaway. Start backwards, give the kid permission to talk without judgment so that you can truly help them and bring clarity into why they do X, Y, Z with the takeaway in practice.
No doubt. And one thing too, man, we don't want to lead them through the assessment. We truly want them to tell us what they're doing, because we can kind of lead them and ask leading questions that will kind of shape them into what we want them to say. And if you really want to assess a guy, don't. Let it be raw. Let it be real. Let it be them. Give them permission. Create a safe place that they can talk to you and really do the assessment, because we all know that eventually it's going to end up with a training program and a strength and conditioning program and some mechanics drills or swing drills or whatever. But at the end of the day, we got to find out where they're currently at so we can really help them, like you said, hyper individualize it, because that is baseball, whether we like it or not. And it's an individual team sport, and we got to develop these guys where they can master their position that they want to play.
Yeah, for sure, man. And that's going to wrap up this episode of Why Guys Struggle. Again, if you guys are finding any value in these episodes, please leave us an objective review and then head over to strategic-baseball.com and join our circle. We got some stuff we're working on that we want to share with you guys. So thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.